What's up, guys? Happy President's Day. Welcome to Off Field. I'm Nate Jackson, Brandon Krisztal sitting over there. I promise you're going to see him in a second. But want to let you guys know about Trusted American Mortgage. This show is brought to you by Trusted American Mortgage. Trusted American wants to help you save money on your mortgage and get you into a better one. How does that sound? Go to trustedamerican.com to see how much they can save you today.
Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
That's right. Welcome to the show. Happy President's Day. I'm Nate Jackson, Brandon Krisztal here off field. Before we get into the offseason Broncos needs and all the things that entail football offseason in the NFL, do you know where President's Day started or when it started?
I was gonna say where? Washington, D.C., I would assume.
Well,
Although you know how you can do like, hey, it's National Margarita Day, National. You go to
National
that.
Hot
There's
Dog Day.
literally a website, and you pay a dollar amount, and so like we know National Hot Dog Day or Margarita Day because it'll whatever. It's just on the internet. But if you go to that website, it'll tell you the 6 other things that people have paid for. So I don't know what the threshold is because I don't know if we can make it like Nate Jackson Day or whatever.
That'd be
But-
cool.
But I think this is a step above that because it's a federal holiday.
Yep.
And lots of people have today off, like they have school off, like, Memorial Day, days like that. So I don't know, but I would love to know the
The
answer.
origin. Well, it's for our first president, George Washington.
G-Dub.
The holiday was named after him because he was such a badass, Brandon. But then it kind of got expanded to encapsulate another president. Can you name the other president whose birthday falls between Washington's and this day?
I think
February 12th.
I believe it's Honest Abe.
Abraham Lincoln. You got it
Abe
right
Lincoln.
there, Brandon. Not only are you a smart sports guy, you clearly know the history of your country.
Some of it. Have you ever read Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter or saw the movie that was not as good as the book? I hate being that guy.
You read that
I
book?
read the book. There was a stretch where I was living in New York and working in Long Island and read a bunch because my wife makes fun. She's like, I've never seen you read a book. I'm like, I read a book a week. It's just in very short form.
Now?
Yeah, like I don't have the time.
Oh, 'cause you're reading your phone?
Yeah, constantly. But I'm like, every day I get up and I read the news feed and I read anyway. It was an entertaining book. The movie, they had to pare it down and they cut out a bunch of
The guy who produced that movie, he's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. He worked on the set of Braveheart.
Yeah.
His name's Jim Lemley. He's like a buddy of, he was just like an assistant on the set there, but he fell in love with Sophia Marceau, who was the actress in that movie, and they have a child together. But he's a good dude. I met him in LA when I was like trying to do the Hollywood thing.
I imagine that he would tell you the same thing, that like the movie, just because of time constraints, like it would be a much better series now in a world where you can make 6 and 10 episode things.
Right.
And anyway, happy President's Day to all who celebrate.
Yep. Happy President's Day. I hope you're enjoying your day today, although kids aren't in school, so you're going to have to figure that out.
Yeah, which I had to the hard way because I thought my wife, because she works for a much bigger company and doesn't just do shows, right? Because sports are on, TV's on. She's like, oh, no, I have a bunch of meetings. I'm like, all right, well, then I'll bring the kids with me. So here we are.
Here we are. All right, let's get into this because the Broncos are now dealing with basically their first offseason after finding the quarterback of the future. So this is not a need. And for so many years, it was a need. And it was like, who's going to be the next signal caller? Who's going to be the guy we can, rely on for the next decade? They found him in Bo Nix. And so in the first quarter of this show, we're going to talk about the pro days. Is that what we're doing?
I think we should let's go chronologically.
Yes, we're going to talk about the NFL Combine because the NFL Combine is right around the corner. Isn't that right, Brandon?
It is. It starts next Monday. And so I was trying to find the order of things because there's an order to how it happens.
Yeah, because some players will decide not to work out at the Combine and save it for the pro day where it's a more friendlier situation at their own field with their own ball and things like that instead of, being around a bunch of other players from other teams.
Yeah, and they just there's some players that just don't need it. And I go back to, and I realized COVID happened a month later, but at the Combine, Jordan Palmer, Carson Palmer's little brother, is a renowned quarterback coach. He's
been doing it for a while.
He wasn't a great quarterback in the league, although he played for a handful of years, so I don't want to be dismissive. And he was a good college quarterback, but when your brother's a Heisman winner and borderline Hall of Fame talent, It's not the same, but he's had Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. But one of the guys he had was Joe Burrow. He always has 2 or 3 like top guys that'll work with in a given year. And I remember him saying, I don't want Joe to do anything other than the meetings. He's like, he doesn't need to do his pro day. So Joe Burrow wasn't even planning on doing his pro day. And I don't remember if that happened before or after COVID shut everything down, but it obviously didn't affect Joe Burrow's draft status or obviously what he's been able to do in the NFL. But I would be shocked if Cam Ward and Shedeur throw.
Yeah.
Like every now and then you'll be surprised. Cam Newton, I believe, threw. Josh Allen just wanted to show off. And I remember him throwing what seemed like a 75-yard pass in the air to Christian Kirk. Just that. And it's funny because you'll hear people be more and more critical of that roll. We'll see it at pro days too.
Oh, God.
Roll out opposite. Excuse me. Opposite of your strong arm. You roll out right and throw it back across the field.
Yeah, Trey Lance did a hell of a throw.
Trey Lance had a big
Oh
time.
my
one of
God!
those.
And so Zach Wilson had to do it, and everybody did that one.
And John Elway had that. Like I was like, John Elway does that in games, but you're not going to do that. Like no one else is doing that in games.
No.
If you are, you're probably getting picked off, or the play's getting your receiver killed or whatever.
I feel like Aaron Rodgers has done that.
No, there's certainly got. I mean, Mahomes,
well, actually,
Allen.
Shedeur did that in that, and Aaron Rodgers did it like the last play of a game, like you end up rolling left.
Or I guess you roll left and throw it back right.
Yeah,
It's so silly. But it does show off. It does show off your arm strength, which that is a box that needs to be checked. Whereas like Bo Nix, people were skeptical of his arm strength. We talked about that last week, and clearly he kept it going. But so the combine,
how valuable is this combine really these days? Because
it's valuable and so the name combine comes from. They combined all these regional camps. So they would have all the college kids in the Southeast working out in wherever, Tallahassee. And so they'd all go up there. They'd have one in Arizona. They'd have one in the Northeast. And like, let's just bring them all together because we're spending money as NFL teams. And the NFL wasn't as big as it obviously has become in the early 80s when they did this. Like, let's just do it all somewhere central. So they did it in Indianapolis. And they keep talking about moving it. And they can get around it. But the medical thing is the main reason.
Yeah.
And there's the hospital they use there has like 12 MRI machines. Most hospitals have one. So you either split the guys up or whatever. So it's in Indy again this year, then it's up for a bid. But Indy is kind of the perfect city for a number of reasons. All the hotels are connected to the convention center. So you never have to even go outside it. Not all, but a bunch of them where everybody stays. So you have 3 things going on. Early in the week, coaches and GMs talk. So Sean Payton and George Payton will talk. Sean never talked at the combine before.
What do you mean they'll talk to media?
They do a press conference.
Yeah.
So the same podiums where you see Shedeur, like I expect Shedeur and Travis to talk, but I don't think they're going to work out because they just don't need to.
Well, if there's a microphone and some cameras, Sean Payton will be talking.
But he didn't do it forever. He didn't do it forever. That's the thing, because Bill Belichick didn't do it because Bill Parcells didn't do it.
Okay. But now he does it?
He does it as he was coaxed by, it's like, look, there's a lot of Denver media. Saints, you had 4 people that followed you. There's 18 people here from Denver.
I refuse to believe that Sean Payton makes any decisions based on a convenience for Denver media. Clearly, like, he doesn't really give much of himself to Denver media. I know he does his daily things at the podium, but he doesn't really give much. He opens up to Seth Wickersham. He opens up to his buddies in New Orleans. He opens up to Kay Adams. He opens up to the national media. He opens up to Barstool for some reason. We'll go on stage with
Gruden was there. Wasn't Gruden on stage with him?
Yeah, but so
that's
was Gilly the Kid, who I don't know if you know who that is, but Sean Payton had to get shouted down by Gilly the Kid.
I know Gilly the Kid's the reason that the Eagles have adopted the Too Short Blow the Whistle song as their anthem. You know, there's plenty of Philly artists and rappers.
Yeah, the Roots.
The Roots being at the top of the list.
Yeah.
But so here's what we've learned about Sean Payton. Sean grew up in the NFL. Like, he saw how he worked for Jim Fossil. He saw how he did stuff. He worked for Ray Rhodes. He was around Gruden. But then he got to Dallas and saw how Parcells limited everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do we have to do? What's required by rule? That's why on Mondays, we don't go meet with the coach in person. We do a conference call on the phone via Zoom, because he doesn't have to sit face-to-face like some coaches do, like Mike Shanahan did forever.
Yep.
And so he just never did it because you're not required by the league. They just do it to address things, and it gives national media from other cities a chance to, it's a 15-minute session. Although Sean he did it the first time 2 years ago, and he's obviously having to answer Russ questions. And one of the guys from the league goes, okay, one more question. He goes, oh no, a lot more questions.
No, many more.
And so if you watch now, like, Broncos PR doesn't put a timer on Sean. They let him just go because he can moderate it himself, and it'll be like 2 more. And he does it post game too.
Listen, yeah. So,
so the funny thing was, he's talking, And he's like 23 minutes, and it's supposed to, they're 15 minutes because it'll literally be back to back. Like sometimes Sean Payton, George Payton, or Sean Payton, Pete Carroll, like same podium, even though 6 podiums, the way they do it's weird.
You can take the minutes off of George's
Yeah.
time.
It was, and he goes, yeah. Somebody asked him a question about George, and he's like, yeah, I think he's going to be talking after me. And George is like just standing right behind him, but I'm like, yeah, he's right there. And he's like, oh, hey, George. And okay, a couple more. And, you know, so the thing, I think what we've seen with Sean, and this is good, is that the things he did. And the things he didn't do, you had to convince him of here. Like he didn't used to talk to the radio, but he talks to Dave Logan every Friday. Sorry to let you behind the curtain. That's not live in the locker room. There's a handful of coaches that do the locker room pregame show or that game day one. But anyway, like he added that. He talks at the combine now. There's just things that he's added that he talks before the draft. I'm not sure he did that. Anyway, so those guys will talk over 2 days. But the prospects start to arrive and they go through all the medicals. And that's the biggest thing. And then they'll meet the media and they put NFL legends. So like Will Shields will be with the linemen and Chad Pennington will be with the quarterbacks. And I'm leaving guys out. John Randall's there to hang out with the D linemen kind of thing and just talk to him, be around him. They meet with the PA. So it's like 3 days of the biggest job interview you're ever going to have. The players will talk to anywhere from 1 to 32 teams in 2 different places. Something called the train station where literally it's speed dating. All the prospects are there. And you literally have like, I remember Shane Ray said the only time he talked to anybody from the Broncos, he goes, I remember Wade coming up to me at the train station. But like Wade's waiting in line behind the pass rush coach for the Falcon, you know, or whatever it may be. And then they meet in a 15-minute session with the execs and coaches and in the stadium, like in a suite.
Yeah.
But that's it. But that's one of the 2. So that's 2 things that are there. 3 things go on, 4 things. Coaches,
7 things.
12
coaches, things go on.
Coaches, GMs talk. Prospects talk. Prospects do their medicals and interviews. And every agent in the world is there because of their players being there. Agents start to meet with teams to talk about their players. But also, you want to know why free agent deals are done the second that it starts? It's because, and by the way, I also represent these guys. And the NFL intentionally isn't monitoring when agent A talks to personnel guy from team A about their pass rusher. Are we going to resign him? Oh, by the way, we have this corner that's coming, you know. So all those deals start to get talked about. So you got 5 things going on at once that week. And it's kind of spring break for coaches and personnel people.
That's what I was going to get to because a lot of this, you know, the Super Bowl, like the week, the radio row, it's a reason for everybody to get together and hang out. Schmooze fest, parties, cocktail, you know, drink.
Yeah.
Everyone's just partying.
The partying, having a good time.
Is the same thing happen at the draft? Is it really a big social hour?
At the combine.
Sorry, at the combine.
It absolutely is. And they've changed hours around because like when teams meet with prospects and but there's a handful of places you can go. Indy's one of those towns where everything's downtown, like I said, not just hotels. And you can legally drink till 3. There's a couple places that'll stay open even after that.
And you know.
That kind of have a wink, wink, nod, nod with the city.
Yeah.
But it's gotten a little oversaturated with media, like everything cool in the NFL has, unfortunately, in some respects. But there used to be spots where you could just be hanging out and you'd be like, yeah, there's John Gruden at the bar talking to these personnel people and a couple media, you know, and you can still find those pockets of places around Indy. It's just the most obvious places have become a little less obvious every night, but there's still a couple big nights where literally Jerry Jones will have the Cowboys bus parked outside and he and Steven will be sitting in the corner with some agents and with some media, you know.
All right, so you're rubbing shoulders with the rich, powerful media owner contingent in the NFL.
But also up and coming coaches too. That's that's a good chance.
All right. So what about the players themselves? What are we learning? What is the most valuable thing you learn about players at the draft? Is it their temperament when you get to sit and talk to them? Is it what they look like up close? Is it their swagger? Is it the medical stuff, the injuries that they really have or maybe hiding? Or is it them actually running, lifting, jumping, that kind of thing?
So if you ask personnel people, they'll tell you it's all valuable. You really drill down, the medical is the number one thing because stuff comes up that isn't on the player's just history. They never missed a game. You didn't know. It wasn't on a medical report anywhere. You're like, oh, you've got bone on your knee. Big Alfred Williams, great example. Alfred Williams is going to be a top 5 pick, top 10 pick, Butkus Award winner, 2-time first team All-American, 2-time Big 8 player of the year. He finds out that he has AFib because he's doing a stress test on the treadmill. Then he goes out and runs the slowest 40 of his life. And if you talk to Al about it, most people aren't supposed to have AFib at 19. You have it in your 60s and 70s, but he finds out he has a heart issue. So it's the medical is the most important. A lot of these guys come in super polished, and so they know how to answer every question.
Because this season has become an industry. And your agent, who you're just mentioning, has a team of people preparing these guys for it. And so that's an interesting sort of result of this, is that you become, as a player, prepared to take these tests, and you kind of lose sight of what this is about, which is playing football. So you become like a 40 runner, and you work on your technique to run these 40s better, or you become, you work on your bench to do how many times you can do 225 or the jumps, and you change a little bit your natural body lean and the technique with which you run, so you can run a faster 40, so you can run a faster L shuttle, so you can run a faster 60-yard shuttle, basically, so you could. And the idea is you'll make more money because your draft status will improve. However, some guys can get so focused on this, they become these combine warriors.
Yeah.
And
Mike
then they get on the field.
being
right.
John Ross.
Yeah.
Fastest 40 ever until.
But the best coaches understand that as well. And that there's nothing better than probably your college tape to understand what kind of football player you're going to be.
And so two things about that. You'll have guys that will lift and they won't run till their pro day because they will have put on weight to be stronger.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not going to run. My legs bothering me. I'm going to run at my pro day. Then they lean down. They don't lift at their pro day. So they're gaming the system. But like you said, these people understand that. But then you have, and we'll see if this happens. I guess I'm just assuming Travis Hunter will be there because we heard he's going to be there as a corner. And the reason that matters is because that's the groups that he hangs out with. That's the day that he talks. It's when he goes through medicals and all that. Marvin Harrison Jr., who has a leg up on every other draft prospect of the last 50 years for two reasons. One, his dad's in the Hall of Fame, so there obviously are some means there. And then two, he's in the NIL era, one of the first guys that, all 3 years of his school were NIL opportunities. And that's where this is going to continue to change. Shedeur Sanders is going to be sitting down and be making as much, if not more money than every single person he's talking to, save for a handful of head coaches and personnel people.
Weird.
Because Shedeur, if you believe the reports, made $6 million last year. Again, his dad's also a Hall of Famer and has those means. But on his own, he earned...
That's more than I made in my entire career.
Right. And he did it last year as a college quarterback and made something probably similar, maybe a little less, 2 years ago. So he's going to come in and we'll just round up to $10 million that Shedeur has in the bank, not needing to borrow money from agents. And so then he can really dictate who he wants, and they can do that anyway, but he can say, no, I'm talking to all the teams in the top 10 or whatever. I'm talking to the Raiders, I'm talking to the Giants, I'm talking to the and it's not just Shedeur. All these kids are coming in a little different.
So how does that change the dynamic there between, because football really is it's really about like saying yes, coach.
Right.
Hold on. It's really about saying yes, coach, and being an obedient soldier. It doesn't, like, even though quarterbacks have gotten more power and more sway, you still sit across from a coach. You're supposed to be like, wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, and ready to run through a wall for this guy. But now you got a guy coming in with $10 million in the bank. How's that going to change that dynamic with a coach?
I think it will really reveal the person. And to finish the one thought on Marvin Harrison didn't do a damn thing. He showed up at the combine, did his medicals, and left.
Yeah.
I don't think he even met with teams. And he said, I'm spending all this time getting ready for football. I'm running routes. I'm catching balls.
Yeah.
I'm learning offenses. I don't need to bench press to show you that I'm a good receiver. You can watch my game tape. Oh, and by the way, my dad's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I'm taller and faster. So
and the same holds for Shedeur.
Yeah, same with Shedeur.
Yeah.
The difference is
one is a quarterback.
One's a quarterback. And so the quarterback, you're the CEO of the franchise to some degree. This is a little thing. And I know, but this is the season of little things. You go back to that movie Draft Day, which has a lot of silly stuff. But one of the things that it focused on was the quarterback. Spoiler alert. Nobody came to his birthday party. Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of a big deal. And another prospect, they put money in his playbook they sent him. And the one guy sent it back to the team because he didn't need their money or whatever. They did it as a test. Kevin Clark, who's covered the league for a long time, has a podcast on ESPN with Omaha Productions, and said that when Shedeur was there the other day, he not only said hi to Kevin, but went out of his way to shake the hand and say hi to everybody on his little 4 or 5 person crew. He said, in all my years of doing this, I've never seen a college kid do that. So it's a little thing, but we're not critical of Shedeur other than we're observant and curious.
Oh, yeah.
How's he going to live in a world outside of Deion's reach.
Yeah, I think his friendship with Tom Brady and the things that he's able to absorb from being around pros his whole life, he's going to know how to do that part. To me, it's going to be about on the field and the situation that he had in CU, playing oftentimes against inferior talent, actually at Jackson State as well, and a spread offense, and he was shotgun the whole time, and the defenses weren't as fast or as good as he's going to face in the NFL, and he had a superior receiving core than every defensive back group he went against. Now, his offensive line left some to be desired, but it's going to be football-wise very different for him in the NFL. So that adjustment is going to be really interesting to see. And one more thing, Dad?
No, and so to rank them, the most valuable thing is the medical. I think the second most valuable thing is your interaction with the teams, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And if you're Marvin Harrison, you're going top 5, you don't want to interact with them, fine. And then the third thing is probably if you do stuff on the field, workouts, and or just interpersonal dynamics in those groups. And I think because teams want all the information they can possibly get, knowing that when they talk to people with those teams, like with the college players, college teams, they'll go back to their high school team, they'll talk. It's really fascinating too because of the transfer portal. All these dudes have played a bunch of places, which gives you, if you're a team, it's a lot more homework. And Sean Payton's talked about that.
Yeah.
But you can find out what was Jackson Dart like at USC versus what is Jackson Dart like at Ole Miss. What was Shador like? Talk to some people that were around him at Jackson versus when he was in Boulder.
Yeah, kind of like Bo Nix. What was he like in Auburn versus Oregon? What he learned? And yet a lot of these coaches and GMs are playing their cards close to the vest. They're not looking at the one that they really like. Like Pat Surtain, Georgia knew he wanted to draft Pat, and that's why he didn't look at him. He didn't send a scout there. He didn't talk to him whatsoever because he knew that was his guy. Just like you said with Shane Ray, maybe they knew they were going to get him. They decided not to talk to him.
They didn't. Shane Ray was supposed to go in the top 5, and then he got busted with weed in his.
Right. But what I'm saying is the Broncos didn't even talk to him.
Right.
So a lot of
they
times
didn't talk to Bradley Chubb.
Yeah, the guy that they're actually going to draft, they don't even look at him when other people are around because they don't want. It's lying season.
It is lying season,
like you said, Brandon. All right, that's the end of first quarter.
Second quarter.
Lying
season gets ramped up even more. I think. I guess you could say that lying season is ramped up all the way until the draft, really, because that's where. But you're limited by where you're picking and who's available. But the lying season on the free agency stuff, and that comes on March 12th, I believe, is when you can start talking to guys, legal tampering. And I think part of it was the NFL just thought it looked silly that they were opening the window and 10 deals were done at 12:01 a.m. on whatever the day was. So I believe March 16th is the start of the league year, which is where certain contracts kick in, and if you're going to cut guys, and is it a March 16th designation versus a June 1st? It's really nerdy cap stuff that matters to the teams, and you'll hear things thrown around. But who teams are interested in adding or keeping, that comes a month from the 12th is when they can officially start talking, and that's when you hear deals are done pretty quickly as well. But it doesn't have to be at 2 p.m. our time, Mountain Time.
So what you were saying is based on the conversations happen in the combine and things like that, everybody being around each other, some of these deals are already in place. What should the Broncos' priorities be in free agency? Because clearly, the draft of free agency is different. Draft you're building for the future, and you're trying to kind of spread it out. You don't want to draft 5 safeties or anything like that. What you want to do is sort of, in my opinion, you get a safety, you get a receiver, maybe 2 receivers, you get an offensive lineman, you get a variety of players that you're going to need, because you're going to need solid players at every position going forward forever.
Yeah.
And so you use the draft to do that. Of course, best player available to an extent, but you also want to spread it out, in my opinion, and draft a variety of players. But free agency, you kind of hone in on specific needs or specific players whose resumes you value and would like to see on your team. What do you think the Broncos' approach is going into this free agency season?
Well, I think that they've spent so much money in free agency 2 years ago. They couldn't spend any money really in free agency last year.
Right.
They were able to pull off a coup of a trade because the Jets screwed themselves in their cap situation and land JFM at the draft. And that happened later. But the only thing they could really do was sign Brandon Jones. Cut
JFM, by the way, tweeting a couple days ago, like, I can't, something about the parade. Did you see that?
Yeah,
he's like, we're going to have it soon.
Yeah.
Well, calling a shot.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So JFM ends up being a new 2-year deal when he comes, a new extension. It wasn't a lot of money. It's like 14. I mean, it's not a lot of money, but $7 million. a year.
Jonathan Franklin Myers.
John Franklin Myers.
Yeah.
Does he
He's the JFL.
does he sign a new deal? But the only deal they really made, because they cut Justin Simmons.
Yeah.
I remember that ruining my morning because I was doing morning updates on KOA.
Yeah.
And just disappointed because Justin's one of my favorite players I've ever covered and so
Ever.
great in the community. And then you're on that list.
Second best, Justin.
Yeah, behind Champ.
Yeah.
Champ's number one. But they added Brandon Jones was about it. They add Josh Reynolds, but those were low deals.
Cody Barton.
They added Cody Barton for literally nothing, a 1-year deal. I think that their priority should be the guys, because when you look at, and this is without even doing a lot of, digging into, we know the running backs, it's like Nick Chubb, and that's the best option. And we know he's not where he was. And it goes down from there.
Yeah.
But linebacker, you've got 3 studs. Maybe they all get re-signed with their team, and we might find out they're getting franchised in the next day because franchise tags hit tomorrow. I don't think the Broncos need to franchise anyone because they gave Garrett a new deal.
Yep.
Cortland's still technically under contract. That's going to need to be worked out one way or another.
Is he going to hold out again if he's still under
I
contract?
would.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if they don't have it done, I'd be like, look, I was even more productive this year and more valuable to a young quarterback, and he should get that second tier, 3 years, 22 to 24 million, not 30 like Justin Jefferson, but not 16 like
You
he's
think
getting
that's going
now.
to happen for Cortland?
Maybe, depending on how the other part of the free agency goes. I don't think it's a day one thing because I think there's 3 guys and you're lucky that they're all available if you sign any of them. Zach Bond, who was a big key as one of the inside linebackers in Vic Fangio's defense. I don't know why I said it was a 4-3. They run a 3-4, but he was left inside linebacker on the depth chart. He can move around and he can come off the edge. Might be good for Drew Sanders to be around a Zach Bond.
Yeah.
Brought into the league by Sean Payton. So there's that tie there. Nick Bolton, who's just always around the football for the Chiefs, number 32, their inside linebacker, who was Drew Lock's teammate at Missouri, that college over in Columbia. He's available. And then Dre Greenlaw, who
That'd be a risk, though, coming off the Achilles, and he wasn't able to finish the season, right?
Agreed. So, but that also might
make him cheaper.
If the medicals check out. And that's one thing the Broncos have been with Bo Lowry in the fold. They've been pretty healthy and they've been pretty good on the medical side. So I would think that.
So I was thinking about the Eagles as well, incredibly healthy. 21 of their 22 day one starters started the Super Bowl.
Well, it goes back to Super Bowl 50, same thing. Like the Broncos started not only their 11 starters on defense, one of the best defenses of all time, that started day one. I know that year Derek Wolfe was suspended for PEDs, but he was a starter. They also had their back, like Bradley Roby as your nickel, Todd Davis as your third linebacker. The only 2 players that were in that rotation that were hurt, it's like they're top 15, 16 guys, because Shaq Barrett and Shane Ray. It was Omar Bolden and Dave Bruton, who had broken his leg in that Steelers game.
Yeah.
Health. Really,
so much of it is determined by your health.
And you bring up the Eagles, though. I don't think the Eagles can afford to sign Zach Bond because they've leveraged themselves against the cap to win, and it worked. But now they have to pay other players, and they have to pay the big guys that are already under contract, and those contracts are kicking in.
Yeah.
So I would think that Zach Bond is a realistic target. I'm going to throw the question back to you. Without looking at the tight ends and kind of having an idea that the running backs are second tier at best, we know the wideouts that are potentially out there in a trade. But what do you think priority one should be if they're going to spend
free agency wise?
If they're going to spend 12 to 15 million on a guy, so which is I think what would be the high end on someone like Zach Bond.
Yeah. Don't like a running back. I think we should draft a running back, maybe even 2.
They said this is a super deep running back class on top of Genty, got a bunch of guys, and we know that running backs can be found in every round.
Yeah. I feel like there's not a great tight end option out there in the free agent market. And so, and I'm in favor of drafting a guy there as well and developing him. You got a guy, you got a couple guys on the roster, I think, who would be good to develop a young tight end. What's his nuts? The tight end on the Broncos right now?
Lucas Kroll?
No. The starter.
Troutman.
Yeah, Troutman. He's a smart guy.
Yeah, you're fine with
Troutman
being on the team.
And no, what I think is he's a good example for a young tight end because he does things the right way. He knows the system. He's articulates Sean Payton's system in a way that most players on this team haven't or can't because they haven't been around Sean Payton that long. And tight end's a difficult position to learn. And so I think bringing in a rookie and having Adam Troutman around to teach him the ropes within a couple of years, you'd have a stud on your hands. I like the idea of bringing in a receiver. if you find the right guy that's going to mesh with you and you have a plan for Cortland Sutton. For example, if you sign T. Higgins, what happens to Cortland? Probably doesn't make sense to have him around, right?
No, not unless he wants to
can't
play
pay
the
him.
final year of that deal.
Yeah.
And maybe he wants a new lesser deal, but I wouldn't want that if I'm Cortland. I'm like, I can go be a
Yeah.
dependable piece for Kyler Murray,
Right.
and play opposite of Marvin Harrison.
Yeah. And then there's like the Debo idea, which is very intriguing because he's so dynamic, but he's also, Marvin Mims is sort of doing some of that same stuff.
And he's oft injured.
Yeah. And he's often injured, and he's, almost 30, and his playing style is pretty reckless.
Can I throw some more names at you? I didn't realize
Yeah.
these wideouts that are all available.
Yeah.
Stephon Diggs is at the top of the list. These are based on just what they've made last year. Stephon Diggs, I would want no part of that around a young quarterback.
I agree. I mean, he can run any route in the book, but he's kind of not the best locker room guy, perhaps.
No, he'd make sense at a place like LA if they made the money work, if then they moved on from Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Like, you need a veteran quarterback that's going to keep him in line. T. Higgins is on that list.
Yeah.
We'll see. He may get franchised, although that would be weird.
Yeah.
But the Bengals Joe Burrow was adamant he wants both those guys. Keenan Allen, it's kind of like a
Probably
shorter
not.
Cortland Sutton.
Yeah, exactly. And he's been hurt a lot too.
Amari Cooper felt like there was a drop off. Like,
Yeah.
how does Amari get to Buffalo where he has Josh Allen and plays worse?
Yeah. No, I wouldn't touch that.
Brandon Cooks, who just gets 1,000 yards just about everywhere he goes, except for here.
He does. I wouldn't touch
Dallas
that though. I think you
yeah.
got a lot of young receivers here who you'd rather throw the ball to.
Deontay Johnson, no thanks.
No.
And then DeAndre Hopkins looked old.
Yeah, and
Mike Williams, who we know there's talent there, but he wasn't able to do anything.
You've got Devon Vele, you've got little Jordan
Agreed.
Humphrey, those are all the same body types.
So even on that list, trading for Debo or T. Higgins is about all you would.
What about the Cooper Kupp angle?
Cooper Kupp's 30 years old also.
But he's the reason why I like Cooper Kupp is because he brings his lunch pail to work every day type of guy. He really appreciates where he is. He puts in the work. He's like done everything the right way, and he would be a fantastic example for the younger receivers on how to come to work and become a better pro. I think Cortland Sutton does that, but aside from Cortland, there's nobody in that room who has experience that guys can lead or the guys can follow. And for me, when I came into the league, man, and I came here in particular, it was Rod Smith who was the example. And
should be in the Hall of Fame, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. And we all did exactly what Rod did. If he was, in meetings, if he wrote we started writing. I was sitting behind him. I didn't see what he was writing, but if he starts writing, I'm going to write whatever he just heard. He wrote down. I'm going to write something.
Did you ever check to see what he was ranking?
No.
The funniest thing if he was like grocery list popped into his head in the middle of that, and he's like, all right.
No, the only thing I did check was when he sent me upstairs to get his paycheck. I looked at that, and it was a lot different from mine. A lot different.
This isn't apples to apples, but
I was on the practice squad.
I had a similar moment. My first job not my first job, but my third job in radio was at Sirius when it was just Sirius. It wasn't even Sirius. And I was in charge because my boss trusted me of dealing with all the contractors' paperwork. So Chris Carter, Shannon Sharp, all those guys that did 2 shows a week. I had to get it to the payroll people. So I'd walk and I'd carry it and I'd just be looking at what they're getting paid. And I'm like, these guys are working for 4 hours and they're making X. I'm working.
What's X?
It was a lot of grand for, several $1,000s that even today would still be good money to do a 2-hour show. Yeah. More than you and I are getting for doing this show. That's for sure. For Chris Carter. The funny, I love Shannon Sharp. He's one of my all-time favorites. The amount of times that he would be late to a show in his house, he just had to go put the headset on, and it would be like the producer would be calling his then girlfriend, and he was like finishing up his first of 3 workouts for the day because he was on one of the earlier shows.
3 workouts, yeah, he works out a lot.
And so it was that was one of my all-time favorite memories was, that. But then looking at their checks, you're like, I wish I would have played in the NFL because then I could make these silly.
Yeah, well, I played in the NFL and I didn't make what Rod made.
No, I get that. Yeah, that's a.
All right, well, so we'll keep our eyes out.
Wideouts. Is there any other position that safety, linebacker? These guys are making 8.5. Like
linebacker.
8.5, 10 is
I think linebacker is valuable because linebacker is one of those positions where the longer you play it, the more you see. And that middle linebacker, the skills to cover tight ends and just do all these things that you learn as you go. And these guys who come out of college are probably not going to be clicking on all cylinders as a middle linebacker, and so if there was a middle linebacker, a guy that you valued his skill set, his leadership and things like that, I think that would be a route the Broncos would look into.
Do you have a preference, Zach Bond or Nick Bolton? Obviously, Bond has a familiarity with Sean and vice versa, and so that always bumps you up.
Bond's a longer body, right? He's a bigger guy.
Yeah, but
and so probably
let's see which one's older.
Anyway, we'll look into that.
Yeah, he's 6'3", 220. I mean, he's built.
Bond.
Yeah, Bond's 6'3". Nick Bolton, I think, is closer to 6 foot.
Yeah.
Third rounder out of Wisconsin.
Yeah. So this is a VJ thing and the kind of body type he prefers for the scheme he likes to run. But we're going to keep our eyes on that free agency market, which opens up in a couple weeks here. All right, halftime. All right, you want to set up our halftime gig?
Yeah. So this came up a lot this weekend because the NHL did something really cool, and they created this mini tournament called the Four Nations Cup. Four Nations. I think it's called Four Nations Cup. But Four Nations. So USA, Canada, I believe Finland and Russia. I guess I should pay more attention to that. I was focused on America and Canada.
Yeah.
Instead of the All-Star game and the skills challenge and the hard slap shot and 3-on-3 and 5-on-5 and 6 teams and all, they keep trying to make it more interesting, and it just kind of has plateaued. So they're like, we're going to put the best players from Canada, because the Olympics are next year anyway, Winter Olympics. Best players from Canada, best players from the U.S., best players from Finland. And they're going to play in a little mini tournament up in I believe it's Montreal, somewhere in Canada. And then the finals are in Boston. And so the max is 4 games for any team. Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon are obviously on Canada. But USA and Canada, the Kachuk brothers got in a fight within 3 seconds. There were 3 fights within the first 9 seconds.
Is that because the national anthem was booed?
I think that might have been part of it. I think just the
America's
reason to fight.
back, baby.
Is America back? Just because we're fighting, and they managed to win the game, which was more impressive when you look at who Canada had too. And look, our off ice folks will handle the nuts and bolts of the hockey part, but it's like, okay, that is something to watch. And I was playing poker Saturday night, and we were watching the dunk contest because I was with a bunch of people that basketball is their first love. Yeah. But we made a point of like checking back in on the hockey, and and as we saw, and we watched the end of it, whereas the U.S. just kept expanding that lead. But it all of a sudden means something in the middle of the year when otherwise it's a break. And I guess that's an argument.
Did it mean as much as what was his name? No, it's not Mac Miller.
Mac McClung.
Mac McClung.
Mac McClung.
Mac McClung jumping over
Kia.
Yeah.
I think it means more to sports fans. The tricky thing is that hockey's audience is just smaller. But if you were going to, and I guess we'll see what the TV ratings end up being, because you literally had the dunk contest and the 3-point contest and the skills challenge head to head against USA Canada.
Yeah.
And so to see which one gets a better number, something tells me it's still going to be in the dunk contest.
So how could football mirror that? Could it do like break up the Pro Bowl into like college divisions, like the SEC versus? I mean, or regions,
I think to make it
something?
a little more competitive, because
there are not a lot of Canadians in the NFL.
No, you can't do it like that. But I think you could get creative because we know they're not going back to playing football. It seems like that ship has sailed. These guys are already adding a 17th game. It comes at the end of the year, not in the middle of the year. Because some people talk about, let's put it in the middle of the year, give everybody else a break. It's like, well, for the 100 guys that would have to play in it, they would not like that. They'd want the break too. And so I think that both the NBA and the NFL, and that's why some people said, international versus U.S. for basketball. It's like, well, you can't find 12 international players that are better than the 20 American players or whatever that number ends up being. Like, yes, Joker, Giannis, Luka, and Luka's not even an all-star this year. But it's worth exploring because the Pro Bowl happened and you just saw highlights, basically. I'm not saying people didn't watch it, but barely, the Pro Bowl games. So
no, it was sucked.
I think by conferences would be interesting, and then you'll just have to mix and match because you have to put the people in that are in. And you're like, okay, SEC and ACC against Big 10, Big 12, and then the randoms. They do draft for those guys or whatever, and then they do their skills challenge and their tug of war and all their. But I think we've just learned that all-star games, even with baseball, used to be the most competitive, and it still kind of is, pitcher versus batter and all that. They just have gone, by the wayside because the games because we get to watch every game too. That's part of it too. Was before the All-Star game was, this is the only time I'm going to really get to see Michael Jordan because I live in Dallas or Denver. So I could see him the 2 times a year they play, a couple NBA. But now I can see Michael Jordan with Charles Barkley, with Patrick Ewing, and same with baseball. Like you'd see guys you never saw from the other leagues, but then they started having interleague play. And now we can watch every second of every game and every highlight from every game. They just don't mean as much because when you and I were kids, that was the only time we were seeing those guys.
Yeah. Roger Goodell did say that, like, we're not going to not do something because we've never done it before. We're not going to just keep doing it because it's this way it's always worked. So clearly they're open to changing things, and they have tried with the Pro Bowl, and maybe they'll continue to tweak it because it's not that cool. And so maybe, what if they play basketball against each other? That would be fun.
Yeah. Well, I think that's sort of the point, like with the obstacle course and the tug of war. It's like we're going to do other stuff.
They play checkers and chess.
Because they do play flag football and
like tic-tac-toe and what if they did like that kind of thing? A decathlon. That would be fun.
Even a dunk contest.
Yeah.
Add a dunk contest.
There's some dunkers.
No doubt.
All right. Halftime is over. We're moving on to the third quarter, Brandon. And something we alluded to before, we were talking about. Yeah, that's right. Kickoff. Man, I just miss running back out of that tunnel, back out for the second half, getting ready.
The music's not as good.
The music's not as good?
Because it's first half you get thunderstruck.
Yeah, no, but now you're into the game, man, and like you've already been hit a couple times. You're not nervous anymore. You took a pee-pee or a poopy, but mostly not doing that. Most guys, their bodies are on a clock and they don't have to go number 2 at halftime. If so, you got some issues. But you drink a little Gatorade real quick. The coaches
orange slices.
Yeah, and then the coaches meet at the beginning of that, and then they have a couple minutes to relay that to you, and then you're back out because it's only 12 minutes. Okay, 12-minute halftimes in the NFL. Now we're back on the field. Now it's the third quarter, and we're talking about pro days. That's right, pro days. We alluded to that when we're talking about the combine. Some players decide not to do the combine stuff and settle for the pro day stuff. Speaking about pro days here in Denver at CU, is there going to be, or is Shedeur going to throw at that? I mean, is Travis Hunter going to do receiver stuff at that pro day? What's the CU pro day looking like? And on top of that, aside, and I'm sorry to throw a lot of questions at you, Brandon, but you're an expert. Okay, you can handle it. Aside from Travis and Shedeur, what other prospects are we looking at on the CU team or even CSU that might get drafted or might have some decent pro careers?
No, I'm now curious because I should have done my research ahead of time.
He's looking down, not at his phone, but something in his pocket.
No, because I'm curious just the details of that pro day. The reason I would think that Shedeur is going to throw, let's start with CU. The reason I would think Shedeur will throw at his pro day is less about Shedeur throwing and probably Travis Hunter, unless people really want to see him run routes. Because a lot of what he did, I'm not saying he's not a good route runner, but he's not refined.
No.
But his athleticism would take over. He'd turn a hitch into a 20-yard touchdown because he's made a corner miss and he's got that acceleration.
Yeah.
That's why I'd love to see him run because I just want to know how fast he really is. And we may not find out. There's a chance he may run. Although that might hurt his stock if he runs a 4.49 instead of a 4.3 like he looks like. The reason Shedeur would throw, though, would be less about Travis Hunter, more about
do you think
Jimmy
a bad
Horn
40
Jr.
but do you think a bad 40 from Travis Hunter would affect his draft?
No, I think it would affect his lore. If that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
No, he's not as fast as we think. Well, it's fine. Put him on the field, and I bet you he'll make plenty of plays. No, it's about Jimmy Horn Jr. It's about Will Shepard. It's about LeJontay Wester. And those guys are
all receivers.
Yeah, all receivers. And I need to double check to see if they're all invited to the combine. I know that Will Shepard is because Mina Kimes was tweeting about him earlier, said that she's just kind of looking at stuff. She's like, Will Shepard is an intriguing prospect. And I want to say,
you kind of get lost on that roster with Travis.
But didn't he's the one that came from Vanderbilt, right?
Yeah, he had a good season. He had a really good season.
And is one of the top all-time receivers in college football history. But so going back to pro day at CU, the all-time highlight, well, two things happened in the same day was Matt McChesney got destroyed, I want to say, by Nate Solder. Not Matt McChesney, I'm sorry. Matt Russell was like holding the bag, and Nate Solder, I think, destroyed him. Nate obviously went on to a really good NFL career with a couple of rings with the Patriots. Was Mark Sanchez showed up to throw to Scotty McKnight. And Mark Sanchez had just come off 2 years with the Jets.
Why did he do it? Was a friend of his? Or
they grew up together. And so you see the Jets quarterback who's just gone to back-to-back AFC title games show up to throw to his buddy 25 routes or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But so CU will have their pro day. They also have started doing these regional pro days that they will do down at the team's facility. If you played college nearby and this is the closest city and you didn't have a pro day at your school, so Adams State or whatever it may be, CSU, they don't have enough guys that they may not have a pro day. I guess.
Really?
I don't know. I haven't just looked at their draft. Well, they've got the whiteout. And
yeah.
So I would think that.
Well, for me, I was a D3 player, so we didn't have a pro day but I had to go to San Jose State's pro day.
Okay.
And so some local prospects, if you don't have a pro day, you can go to the other school's pro day.
The NFL's added that in recent years, where like you would have just gone to the Niners and the Niners, but
We
not
did-
just the Niners. Everybody would come.
We did that.
Oh, okay.
We had like a regional day where all the schools go to the 49er facility and go into that locker. So for me, I was, I'm walking in this facility for the first time. I'm still technically a college student, and this is the team I grew up
Where
watching.
their facility used to be.
It's still in the same spot, Santa Clara.
Oh, it was always in Santa Clara, and then they played at Candlestick because the new stadium wasn't there when you were coming out. Obviously.
Yeah, it's actually, they built the stadium right next to where their facility always was.
Okay.
So so I'm walking in the front, and there's those Lombardi trophies, and I'm going in the locker room. That's where Joe Montana and Jerry Rice and Roger Craig and Tom Rathman and Ronnie Lott, this is where they worked. But it was very surreal walking in there, because now I can't feel like these are my heroes. I have to feel like these are my peers. And so I walked out on that field with those other college prospects, D1 guys who I'd been watching play on TV. And I'm like, can I compete with these guys? And then I proved to myself, yeah, I can. I walked away from that workout thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this, because I saw what the competition is, and I felt good about it. Their receiver coach pulled me to the side afterwards, like, Nate, you can do this.
Who was the receiver coach?
It was George Stewart, and he's been in the league for a long time. I think he's still coaching the position. He's a big dude with a deep voice, and he's just like beloved coach in the NFL.
Did he play receiver?
Dude, no.
That's
No,
always
no, no.
interesting. The guys that are lifelong.
No.
Like, were you with the Broncos when Wayne Nunley was here?
No.
He's the guy that invented. So he's about my size, and he worked with D-line. Like, he's the guy that invented the football on a stick, which is really for lazy coaches. But football on a stick is, because
it's like a hot dog on a stick.
to
but you don't need
mimic
it.
the snap, right? You would get down on your knee so they can watch the ball move.
So you don't have to bend over.
He was so lazy that,
Yeah.
and or ingenious, that he put a football on a stick at an angle.
Yeah.
And it is more efficient.
Yeah.
Better for your knees, better for your back, and go faster.
Yeah.
But he never came anywhere near a D-line because he's close to my size.
Yeah.
So he told you that. He pulled you to the side.
Yeah, he's pulling me aside afterwards. I mean, I was like so geeked for this workout, and I was like laying out for balls. Like, we didn't have pads on or anything like that, and I'm diving for balls down the field. And he, pulled me aside after, and I was like almost hyperventilating, dude, like, because I was so jazzed for this. But no, he pulled me to the side. He said, you got a real shot at this, and you can do this. You can play on Sundays. Just take it one day at a time. Don't get out over your skis. And that was something I had to learn as a young receiver, was I was so eager to get to where I needed to be and make a play that the clock in my head sometimes sped up, and I didn't hit my depth on my routes and things like that. It was something I really had to learn, is to slow down in your mind. You have more time than you think. You don't have to do it all right here. And that's why I talk about, having a veteran receiver coming in, being a good presence for these guys and showing them how to do it. Because there's a clock in your head, not just for on the field, but off. Everything you do, you don't have to be in a hurry. You're here because you're fast enough. You're here because you're athletic enough. Don't feel like you got to be in a hurry and have, and because then you play out of control, and the timing is screwed up with a quarterback. So interested to see how these pro days go, and it's going to be a circus here. It'll be on national TV. We know that, because everything that these guys do is, and we'll be keeping our eye on that and what the Broncos' needs are in the pro days. All right, for our fourth quarter, the draft. Now, I alluded to this earlier, Brandon, that this is the first time in a long time the Broncos don't have to look for a quarterback.
That really shapes your whole offseason too, which you touched on.
Yeah. And Sean Payton, in his tenure in New Orleans, never had to look for a quarterback. Not one time. Well, maybe, I guess, way, way late, but still, it was always Drew.
Yeah.
It was always Drew Brees. From the moment he got to New Orleans, they arrived on the same year. They went 10-6 that year. They made it to the NFC Championship. Drew Brees was runner-up on MVP voting to LaDainian Tomlinson, his former teammate in San Diego, and Sean Payton won Coach of the Year. That was their first year.
Yeah, it's pretty good first year.
Pretty good first year. But, technically speaking, they didn't have to look for a quarterback either. Do you think there's any lessons that we can take from his tenure in New Orleans to see how he'll approach this draft now that he has his quarterback?
Well, he likes to tell you, and another reason I'm bringing it up is he brings it up a lot, but then George Payton also likes to bring up that 2017 draft where they drafted Alvin Kamara in the third round. They drafted Trey Hendrickson. They drafted Marcus Williams, the safety, maybe a lineman earlier that is a really good player. And so they had all these good draft picks, and he's like, we knew we couldn't sign him, which is why Trey Hendrickson, I think, was the first to go to sign that big deal with the Bengals, and clearly that's worked out for Cincy in theory. I mean, he leading the league in sacks. We know the rest of the defense wasn't great. Either way, but you look at how he built this team the first time around, and it was about the O-line. So what they do here, they spent money, beefed up the O-line. And then he told us that last year at the Combine, in that press conference, he's like, everyone's trying to figure this out, and we think that we're better at this, than a lot of teams out there.
Yeah.
It turns out he may be right. He found the quarterback that fits exactly what he wants. And so for all of the stress about winning and losing that just comes with life, whether it was Drew Brees or now here, when you have that guy, the idea that Sean Payton as a head coach, and he also had a future Hall of Famer in Russell Wilson, that didn't work, but his stress level on finding a quarterback is extremely low, which is also why you look at Ben Johnson. He waited to take a job until he had a guy that he thinks can be the guy in Caleb Williams. But when you have the quarterback, it makes everything else easier. And it doesn't mean it makes it easy, but it allows you to take.
You don't have to worry about that guy.
And that's the thing that matters the most, because if you don't have that guy, then you've got a great team. You're like, damn, where do we find the quarterback? Because there's teams out there that are better than we think. And then if and when they find that, it can change it. The Rams being a good example. Goff got him close. Stafford gets him over the top. And so I think that the Broncos will approach the draft at 20. If one of the guys that they circle, and we don't know who those guys are, it's easy to look at mock drafts. A lot of people think Ashton Genty may fall that far. Not that he's not a higher prospect, but the value of running backs just isn't the same in terms of team needs. But he's such a special player that if he's there at 20, you'd think you have to take him. They have to trade up to get Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State. But the tight end from Michigan might be there at 20. Or maybe you trade back. If somebody wants something at 20, you can get to 22 and pick up a couple more day 2 picks.
And considering the success that George Payton and his staff have had, that might not be a bad idea. I mean, you got Quinn Miners, who's an all-pro. Third round. Jonathan Cooper, seventh round. Devon Vele, a late round. Was he a 7th round pick?
Javonte Williams, you trade up to get him. He was a 2nd round pick.
I mean,
Nick Bonito, the very end of the 2nd round.
That's right. Marvin Mims was a 2nd rounder.
Mims, 2nd rounder. We could keep going.
Yeah.
But this is a very deep running back class, and they say that the real meat of this draft is in picks 20 to 70. So that's your day 2. So if somebody at 20 really wants 20 and you only got to move a couple spots back because there's a player they love and one of the guys you love isn't there. We know George loves trading back. Sean loves trading up. That's the other thing is, Sean will.
He loves trading back. I love trading up.
Yeah. You look at Marcus Davenport a couple of years ago.
I'm going to stand pat.
Out of UTSA, who's been a nice player in the league, but they traded their first round pick for the following year to go get Marcus Davenport from UTSA. And I don't know if he's made a Pro Bowl yet. If you're going to trade a first round pick, you not only assume first rounders are starters, but if you're going to trade to go get them, then you trade a real future asset, then they need to be a Pro Bowler.
Yeah.
And
it's going to be interesting to see how they so they grade everybody going into it, right? And then you're at 20, let's say you stand pat at 20, and all of a sudden a guy falls to you that you have a great grade on, but maybe it's not a need. Let's say it's a corner and you just think he's a freaking stud. Do you draft him over Genty, who's still available? You know what I mean? It's
it's tricky.
Is it best player available or is it position of need? And how do those overlap? And in the moment of truth, when you have one of each in front of you, what do you choose?
I think you're still having to do position of need because your team is close. In this case, you're not needing to rebuild all over the place. You're needing to upgrade in a handful of spots. And he talked about the middle of the defense. And so is there a D lineman that makes sense? That's why I think that at 20, a lot can happen. And so if they haven't traded up to go get Tyler Warren, and I'm just using him as an example, then I'd be in favor of him trading back unless Genty's sitting there at 20. And the draft will change. But when you look at these experts, some of them are experts for a reason. They really do have a good football background. And so if they say Genty's a top 5 prospect, but people need linemen, people need wideouts in the modern NFL, they need DBs because a couple corners are projected in the top 20, that he just is going to slide, but he can elevate your franchise because I get Alvin Kamara was a 3rd rounder, but if that kid could be like that, and I know he's a different back, you have to think about it, even if you're like, well, this corner is a Pro Bowler. There's a Pro Bowl corner because you have the best cornerback in football. You have the best defensive player in football. And then you have other good corners you like.
Your offense is the weakness on the team, in my opinion. And they do need to shore up the running back position and the tight end. I like the idea of using that first pick on a running back or a tight end. Maybe that's just my bias being a former tight end. And I don't know if you know this, Brandon, but my first ever year of tackle football, I played running back.
How'd you do?
Freshman year, horrible. Hadn't hit puberty yet, and I was playing scout team against all the sophomores who had been playing since they were 6.
Yeah.
This was my first year of football.
You were a swimmer.
I was a
among
swimmer
other
going to
things.
that, and and so no, I got rocked a lot that year, and I had
How'd you end up
a
at
helmet
running?
that rattled around. I wanted to be a running back.
Oh, okay.
You
Because of
know,
Roger
'cause I
Craig?
was 5'7", 130.
No, not
That's like a good running back size.
Joe Morris. Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to be I wanted to tote the rock, man.
I get it.
You know, I was used to playing out of the park and smear the what.
Well,
which
but
is just-
also our age, based on that, like Barry Sanders
Oh,
had
yeah.
just come along, and
Yeah.
Emmitt Smith,
Yeah.
and it was the age of the running back.
Yeah.
Walter Payton.
Yeah, that's right. So, interesting to see what the Broncos do there. We'll be talking about it a lot here on Off Field as the months go on, and I'm sure we'll get more information as we go and hammer down on exactly what the Broncos need. All right, now 2 minutes on the clock, Andy. All right, we're going to stay in the NFL, but we're going to move away from the Broncos a little bit and talk about a quarterback with his future up in the air, Brandon, and that's Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is being let go by the Jets. They're parting ways with Aaron after 2 years that Aaron has said were the best 2 years of his life. He did say that. Curious to how
Because
he
he
came
spent
to that
20 of them
conclusion.
in Green Bay.
Yeah.
And he's like, this place sucks.
Right, exactly.
What about the football?
It's like, I'm not in Wisconsin anymore. This is wonderful. 2 minutes on the clock. I want you to sell to me, Brandon, that Aaron Rodgers still has some good football left, and tell me where that's going to be played.
I think it was funny the Jets made him. I think it's funny the Jets made him fly to New York to fire him.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. And so
face to face, man. It's
I texted Darren Muji, their new GM, and I said, well, you fired Aaron Rodgers, so everyone else you fire after this should be easier because no one else is going to have that resume. To me, the Steelers make the most sense football-wise, unless the Niners got to some impasse and Brock Purdy held out. And they're like, you know what? We're just going to play with Aaron Rodgers this year. Brock, we'll see you when we see you, which isn't how they operate. But Mike Tomlin likes Aaron Rodgers.
You never know.
Aaron Rodgers likes Mike T. I'm sure Arthur Smith will love devising an offense that features his strengths. If they can figure out George Pickens' head and Devontae Adams comes along with the
they need another receiver
defense,
there. Yeah.
a bunch of future Hall of Famers, perennial Pro Bowlers on that defense. I think that the Steelers make the most sense for Aaron Rodgers on a 1-year deal because
What about Vegas?
Vegas makes a little bit of sense too. Pete Carroll, they don't have it. They have Brock Bowers. They could bring Devontae back.
He's
He's
still got
got
his
the Taco
house with
Bell. He's got
the
Taco Bell in his
Bell
house.
in it.
So Vegas would make sense too. But I think either of those places, a lot depends on. Well, I guess you would potentially sign Aaron before the draft. But if you don't get the quarterback you want at 6, if you're the Raiders, then that makes a lot of sense. But the Steelers can move on from Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, and it's not the best quarterback draft, and kind of kick the can down the road.
What about his skill set? Does he still have good football in him, or did the last couple of years, in particular, 2 years ago he got hurt, but this last year revealed that he's done?
You think he's done?
Well, I think he looks like he's 40, and there's guys
Some of those
just like
throws still look.
jumping up on him. No, the throws, he can still throw the ball, but the NFL has changed.
Yeah.
And you don't really get to just operate inside the pocket like that, like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning used to.
So do you think he's done, or do you think he'll end up?
No,
on,
he'll keep going.
Which team? Steelers feel right.
Him and Mike T seem to have a love affair.
Yeah.
And you and I, Brandon, we also have a similar love affair. And that'll do it for us today on Off Field. Thanks for joining us on this off-season version of it. And don't forget, this is brought to you by Trusted American. Go to trustedamerican.com and find out how much they can save you on your mortgage today. All right, that's it for us. I'm Nate Jackson. He is Brandon Krisztal. This was Off Field. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.